years after the release of Dead Island, it seems there's still trouble in paradise. Techland's first Vacation Gone to Hell was a solid, albeit flawed outing, which is more memorable for its brilliant promotional trailer than the game itself. The original game was plagued by bugs and a lackluster storyline that failed to develop the 4 characters you could take control of, nor did it flesh out the supporting cast in any meaningful way. Riptide is billed as an expansion rather than a sequel to Dead Island, and as such, uses the same engine and gameplay mechanics, but it's also an opportunity for Techland to showcase improvements to the formula established by the original. Riptide takes place immediately after the conclusion of the first game, with its protagonist being detained aboard an Australian Defence Force ship by Colonel Hardy and Frank Serpo. The survivors of the first game meet a new playable character, John Morgan, who is also immune to the infection. The ship wrecks on the shores of Palanai after being overrun, and the survivors find themselves in a similar predicament to the one on Benoi. They must help other survivors and find a way to escape the undead infestation, in addition to figuring out what the hell the Australian Defence Force and Serpo wanted with him in the first place. Riptide manages to retread the first game's themes and structure. You spend your time running pointless errands for useless, deadweight NPCs, become the errand boy or girl for your group, and you will kill thousands of undead flesh eaters in the process. Your characters are not really developed beyond the brief synopsis of who they are on the character select screen, and a bit of commentary during the game. Likewise, the non-playable characters occupy worn-out genre stereotypes. Unlike other similar narratives, Riptide pays little attention to what humans are capable of amidst such desperation and chaos. You rarely fight the living, and the narrative is stuffed with busy work before meaningful plot points emerge. With so many compelling zombie tales in the past 5 years, Riptide comes off as offensively shallow. The plot is undermined by kitschy quests that confuse the game's tone. Following up a life or death event centered around your party's survival with a quest that has you aiding a delusional mouth breather who thinks he's a zombie fighting superhero divorces you from any of the game's drama.
You knew this, yet you did nothing to stop them.
I'm a soldier. I follow orders.
Well, soldier, here's an order for you. Go fuck yourself.
Just listen to me.
Quests in Riptide are ripped straight from ye olde grimoire of RPG quest design that leans heavily on taking the longest possible route and getting from point A to point B. For example, a character wants you to rescue her from a flooded basement where a shorted out fuse box is electrifying the water. Of course the front door is locked, so you have to kill half a dozen zombies so you can find an entrance on the roof. Once there, you find the fuse box is locked and you have to kill the key holder so that you can open the box. While this design tactic invariably finds its way into most RPGs, Riptide relies heavily on throwing these hurdles in your path, to the point that each optional quest becomes a Herculean test of your patience. Most RPGs reserve this kind of design for optional tasks, but it's a staple of the game's main quests as well. Without any character development or world building, side quests become real-life chores when tackled alone. The only reprieve from this antiquated quest design comes from new holdout missions. These quests emphasize Riptide's co-op gameplay by having your character fortify and defend a position. You can set up sections of fence to block doorways, drop mines, and man Gatling guns. They are generally not difficult, but playing alone means babysitting your party members since their attacks are impotent. In order to make these levels more manageable while playing solo, Riptide includes quests that allow you to upgrade your party's weaponry. All these quests require that you find specific crafting items for each character. Since these items drop randomly, these quests can be an annoyance. The chances of finding these crafting materials increases if you visit one of Riptide's new dead zones. These are instance areas that contain bosses or special infected. Riptide contains around 24 of these areas, and they have one of 5 layouts, so it isn't long before these sequences come off as boring cut and paste filler content. The bosses themselves are just special infected that are given some sort of additional buff, resulting in thugs that move as fast as infected, and butchers that regain health after successful strikes. Speaking of special infected, several new types have been added. Screamers make a horrendous noise that prevents your character from attacking, wrestlers are large freaks with club-like arms and a tremendous amount of health, and grenadiers are zombies in hazmat suits that throw toxic body parts at you. These new additions are welcome, but with so many zombie games, you'll come away with the sensation that you have fought these enemies elsewhere. Also new is John Morgan, a character that specializes in hand-to-hand combat. Quite frankly, he's massively overpowered. Once a few skill points are distributed, he becomes the test tube generated bastard offspring of Pele, Pacquiao, and Leonidas. He can kick zombies better than NFL kickers can kick footballs, and the speed of his fists allow him to tenderize flesh like Rocky on steroids and cocaine. If that wasn't enough, he can throw an uppercut that electrocutes enemies and sends them flying. Those who favor firearms will be happy to know that nail guns and harpoon guns have been added to the early game. Pistols, rifles, and shotguns become readily available much earlier in Riptide than its predecessor. Ammo caches are also sprinkled around more liberally, allowing firearm users to keep more of their cash. Money is generally more plentiful, as are medkits. Melee combat has gone largely unaltered, with the exception of an ability that allows you to drop on top of enemies if you're in an elevated position. It's not a terribly useful ability, since the animation can hang up, allowing zombies to get several swipes at your character before you regain control. Not to mention it looks clumsy and stupid. Also, the ability to level each weapon type has been added. Each level unlocks a perk, such as additional experience or reduced stamina use. Crafting weapons is also a major component of Dead Island. Blueprints can be found around the island and are available as quest rewards, though the special skull blueprints are sadly absent from this game. Overall, combat is enjoyable. You have to manage your stamina meter, and blows to limbs can break or sever them, giving your character an offensive advantage. Most of the weapon mods add elemental damage. Dodging and managing groups of enemies are important as well. Finally, the last big new addition to Riptide is water. Lots of water. Well, not really. In the first quest area, you'll find yourself navigating a flooded jungle with a crummy boat. The waters of Riptide are littered with zombies playing possum and giving you the impression that you're navigating the Ganges. It doesn't make much of a difference in the game's tone or proceedings. Rain will also cycle in, which makes the game a bit moodier. Like the first, drop-in drop-out co-op gameplay adds some Borderlands-esque questing fun to the mix. On-screen indicators allow you to join up with random players with a single button press, and likewise, players will drop into your session if your settings allow it. The tedium of the quest is drastically diminished by the company of friends. Riptide does not offer any arenas or any other form of co-op play, however. Outdoor environments in Riptide look pretty decent on the PC. Foliage is dense, and the vibrant island stands in stark contrast to the darker, grittier aesthetics that many games employ. The character models don't fare so well, however. They appear waxy with poorly animated faces and cold, dead eyes. Some of the textures on their clothing can also be woefully low res. The gore and viscera are acceptable though, as the flesh of your foes can be burnt and hacked away, reacting to the type of weapon you use. Indoor instances suffer from really bland lighting that is devoid of any softness or nuance. Many areas are extremely dark and force you to use your flashlight, which must contain generic dollar store batteries since it lasts about 45 seconds before needing a recharge. Or you can use flares. It does little enhance the atmosphere, and since the game isn't very scary to begin with, relying on your flashlight and flares does little to create tension. Also, some areas are missing textures. The soundtrack fares better though, with a mix of synth and piano that evokes the soundtracks of Lucio Fulci's zombie flicks from the late 1970s and early 1980s. The music succeeds in conveying the desperation and futility of surviving that neither the narrative nor the gameplay are equipped to convey. Sound effects are solid, and some of the roars and cries from the undead can be unnerving. As for the voice acting, well, let's just say it matches the cold, dead eyes of the NPC character models perfectly.
How could this happen? I'd like you to have this. A token for what you did for me. Please.
What's most offensive about Riptide is that it fails to show any improvement over its predecessor. Even though it's built as an expansion and sold at a discount rate, Riptide fails to demonstrate that Techland is aware of the first game's shortcomings and inspires little hope that a sequel to Dead Island could live up to the phenomenal trailers that the marketing team puts out. Uninspired quests, unremarkable and underdeveloped characters, and a predictable rehash of the events of Benoit give the first game's detractors little reason to try this title. That said, the fundamental gameplay of Riptide is still enjoyable. Crafting a special set of tools to dismember the dead while carefully managing your stamina meter as you slice, dodge, and dash your way from one point to the next can be fun. Add some friends to the mix and it can be a blast. Riptide is an unpolished and underdeveloped title that sits on a solid gameplay foundation. Let's hope that Techland takes the time to go back to the drawing board with the next entry in the Dead Island franchise, and emerges with something more cohesive, engaging, and polished. Otherwise, it may have a dead franchise.
Somebody tell me what the fuck is going on here?